Hi, everybody.
Hello, hello,
Welcome
hello.
back. This is our first panel at Litmus Live. Thank you all on the panel for being our first guinea pigs on this live experience. And thank you to everybody who's joining us. I'm really excited about this topic today. This is obviously every time we talk about predictions and the future of email and what's coming next, it is always highly engaged. Our audience is always highly engaged with it. So I am expecting that this audience today will certainly have some questions for us. So please do chime in on the Q&A if you have questions as we go through. What we're going to do today is really talk about, the title of the session is The Future of Email, AI, Automation, and Lifecycle Marketing. But really, we want to just kind of talk in broad strokes and in specifics on just where email marketing is heading and what we can expect to see in the next year or in subsequent years as email continues to evolve. What are sort of the predictions about how subscriber expectations and market conditions and emerging technologies are going to change things, both for the way that we do our work and the way that our audience sort of experiences email. I have a rock star panel of experts for you today. I'm going to ask these guys to go ahead and introduce themselves, and then we'll kick off some questions. Chad, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Chad White. I am the head of research at Oracle Digital Experience Agency, a global full-service digital marketing and communication agency inside of Oracle. I've been in the email marketing industry now for about 18 plus years. During that time, I have written 4 editions of email marketing rules and nearly 4,000 blog posts about email and digital marketing. Which is, yes, it's laughable almost. a lot of articles and blog posts, and it's great to be with you here today.
Awesome. Lauren, how about you?
All right, cool. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Lauren Meyer. I am the chief troublemaker, which is also the chief marketing officer for SocketLabs. I've also been working in email about 18 years, maybe a little bit less than Chad. I've traditionally been on the sender side, working for ESPs, consulting customers on kind of how to solve their deliverability issues, and also sending a lot of emails myself as a marketer. I would say the majority of my career has really been focused on deliverability, compliance, anti-abuse. But now I'm on the marketing side, so I get to focus on a whole lot more and really kind of put myself into the recipient shoes more than ever. And I have a little side project that I'm working on called Send It Right. It's a website that's dedicated to teaching marketers and email practitioners about how to reach the inbox. So check that out if you are interested in learning about deliverability without getting an ice cream headache.
I love it. Drew.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Drew Price. I was Grammarly's first head of lifecycle marketing. My connection also, by the way, just went down. So if my video is going out, I might turn that off for a moment. But I've been in the space also for about 18 years. I ended my tenure at Grammarly in 2020. I spend most of my time now advising and content creating. I have courses. I have a Substack called Scaling CRM, and I'm excited for this discussion.
Fantastic. All right. For our first question, I want to sort of go with the topic of just email volume and deliverability, which is heavy on lots of people's minds. Email volume has obviously reached an all-time high and is only expected to get higher in the next few years. Our inboxes are obviously more crowded than they've ever been. And breaking through the noise of those crowded inboxes will continue to be a huge challenge for anyone in the email marketing space. So let's start with deliverability. And as we've seen that volume grow, we've also seen spam grow. And with that, we continue to see inbox providers implement changes geared to protect our inboxes. I want to start, Lauren, maybe with you on how will this continue to change the overall workflow and approach for the good senders among us, which I hope everyone on this call is, and how can we prepare ourselves for it?
Yeah. So I think, to your point, I think, email volume has continued to grow. Honestly, you could probably tell time with how consistent it's been over the last many, many years. I would say as we move into the future, we've got those new sender requirements from Google and Yahoo. Those are very focused on domain reputation. So it's really helping good sender, well, everybody kind of differentiate themselves from other senders. So I think if you're a legitimate sender, it's not going to be harder to reach the inbox in the future. I was actually at a conference, earlier this month with Google and Yahoo and all these other folks from mailbox providers. The community is really, truly more open to collaborating than I think they've ever been. Historically, there's been this kind of electrified fence between both sides. And I think that's genuinely coming down now. And they're providing just so much more information that helps us understand how we're doing. And if there's a problem with delivery, they're giving us guidance on how to do that. So I think it's really going to make it easier for senders who are paying attention to your data and your performance and actually doing what you're supposed to be doing. I think you're going to have no problem reaching the inbox. It's the folks that are kind of trying to do those squirrely workarounds and all that kind of stuff. You folks are going to need to change your practices. And then I think it's really kind of that point afterwards, right? How do you stand out in a crowded inbox? That's going to be the part that's harder. So you're really going to have to try to figure out what is something unique and super relevant that you can send to kind of catch people's attention and keep that attention. Really, I think it's more about finding ways to enhance engagement, not just overwhelm the inbox with more and more emails. So you really got to lean into your data. And I think it's more of a precision type of thing, use that scalpel and really kind of get in there and just have restraint about what you're doing. We've got AI and everybody's racing to be the first one to kind of have this really cool stuff, but slow down a little bit. I know Drew wants us to go faster in certain ways, and I'm sure he'll talk about that, but do it intentionally, thoughtfully, carefully as well. That will serve your inbox placement very nicely.
Yeah. Drew, do you want to confirm or deny?
So there's two parts of this question. I think I can't say anything better than Lauren on the deliverability side. That was so well said, and she's one of the leading experts. I will talk about volume a little bit, and well, actually on deliverability, I think the fundamentals are always going to remain the same, but there are aspects of it that are going to get more and more conservative, and I think that's a good thing for everybody attending this conference. We should all be happy about more conservative standards. That's good for us. In terms of volume, for me, I do think we will see brands sending more email, but they're going to be the best ones will be doing this because they're doing a better job of managing quality and frequency at scale. And so in other words, come year 2, year 3, year 4, you'll have more active subscribers on your file because you've done a better job managing those relationships at scale. That's the aspirational state that I'm advocating for, and I see the augmentation of tools empowering that ability for us. So in some cases, less messages during activation and onboarding. In some cases, more. Just it's going to go down to the individual subscriber.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Chad, anything to add there?
Yeah, so definitely things have been evolving. Engagement-based representation which is not new, but the new wrinkle there is things like MPP that make it hard for us as senders to be able to tell how engaged our subscribers are. So inboxes and mailboxes have rules that are now harder for us to follow. So that's definitely new. There's a ton of focus on domain reputation, which is why there's all the new authentication requirements. Mailboxes really want to know who is sending the email. They want great identifiers. But that's all stuff that most legitimate senders are not going to have a problem with. In terms of volume, the thing that's funny, so this morning I took everyone sort of back in the Wayback Machine, back to 2009 and beyond, and I would do the same thing now. Back then, there were brands that were sending 3 times a week, and everyone was like, oh my gosh, that's so much. The volume is so high. And some people were sending once a day, and it was like, that's insane. I can't believe they're getting away with that. There's always been this concern that we're sending too much, but the rules there haven't really wildly changed. Subscribers determine when it's too much by unsubscribing and not being engaged. Inbox providers, through engagement-based filtering, tell us, and spam complaints tell us when it is too much. And I think sort of the newer part of the equation is more on the marketer side, us being able to better understand when it's too much in terms of ROI and and sort of that engagement side of things, like, is this strategy working for us? And there, I feel like that's actually the place where I think a lot of really interesting things are happening, especially as we get better analytics, more visibility, and better AI tools. So for instance, we work with one of our clients, the Vitamin Shop, and over this last holiday season, they were able to increase their email marketing revenue by 25% by decreasing their email volume 20% year over year. That's pretty amazing. That's putting more emails into the inboxes of people who are engaged and fewer emails into the inboxes of subscribers who are less engaged, and waiting for those people to become more engaged. So there's that cycle, the up and down of, a life cycle as people become more engaged and less engaged, depending on what's going on in their lives. That's the part I feel like we're going to get way better at, in the years ahead. And that sort of dynamic, volume control and frequency control has a lot of upside to it.
That's a really good point. That sort of one size fits all approach will only get less and less valuable or effective as volume goes up in general. I'm going to shift to everybody's favorite topic, which is AI and automation. I'm going to fold them both into one question here. We now have, we were laughing the other day about we have a full year of living under this framing of AI is about to change everything. And Hanley in her session this morning made a joke about, sort of AI is going to take everybody's jobs. What are you all seeing already in this area in terms of AI actually helping marketers do more at scale? And what limitations have you seen? Sort of, and then I want you to also kind of touch on what predictions you have in the AI space, both for how we approach the workflow and how we approach our campaigns in the coming years. Let's start with Drew on this one.
Okay, great. And Cynthia, keep me honest if my video cuts out. Let me know.
You froze up last time you were talking, but your voice was clear. So now we've got both. So I think we're good.
Okay, great. So what I'm observing right now is that there's more attention on our space than ever before. We have attention from like startups, product people building solutions for LTV optimization and predictive intelligence and churn modeling and these types of things. And you also have internally more leadership teams across engineering, data, and so on, the growth team, product, paying attention to our space as well at the bottom of the funnel and what could we be doing more from a business and growth perspective. So I think that's a fairly objective truth that there's more people looking and paying attention to what we're doing. There is also a lot of talk about AI and generative AI as a whole. I think we would have to get really into the use cases to dissect where we think like we have high confidence of there being something there versus, a red herring or something not worth your time. But what I will say is when it comes to one-to-one optimization, I think we have not gotten nearly as close as we'd like to think we've gotten. And so like, for instance, one of the best tools at our disposal right now is to create journeys using journey tools, canvases, customer journeys, and do A/B testing on these canvases and segmentation strategies. But what we're really doing is still treating people in these very large groups, and we're not doing one-to-one optimization at scale. So I do believe we're headed in a direction now where a lot of people are trying to build solutions to do one-to-one optimization at scale without the need for journeys and traditional segments. And I am seeing some reason for optimism. You will still need a strategic lead or teams managing strategy, managing content at scale, but it's going to be more about setting guardrails, setting North Star metrics, and entry and exit criteria, but then letting things like agentic AI and reinforcement learning making the decisions at the unique user level rather than at the macro segment level.
Yeah. Chad, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of activity out in the vendor community, and including a bunch of startups. the barriers to entry appear to be very, very low, I will say. And folks that have very little expertise in email marketing or even digital marketing seem to be spinning up companies. So do be wary of some of these folks. They don't really understand how things work. So we recently did a webinar where we talked about 40 different opportunities for classic AI, machine learning, and generative AI throughout the email production process. And so there's definitely a lot of cool things you could potentially do. All these places are like, small improvements in efficiency. And some of them are bigger ones for sure. But we are talking about lots of different sort of addressable places, and some of them are kind of, on the early side, and some are a little bit more developed. But I think nobody needs more of a rah-rah about AI. So let me talk about limitations. Let me bring us down a few notches. So, on the Gen AI side of things, there's plenty of privacy and security concerns. Some of these things will probably be litigated over the next decade, to be honest. And some of these issues have really kept a lot of enterprises, which are like the size of our clients, has kept them really out of it for the most part. Things like RAG, where you're able to augment these models and make them more more highly trained on your circumstances, that's going to take things really far. A lot of these models are now coming inside the firewall. That eliminates all these security concerns. So that's all good. But a lot of this stuff is still like kind of happening like right now. So it's going to take a little bit while for adoption to spin up. But long term, I think, for instance, everybody's going to have like brand guidelines that are enforced by AI. Those kinds of tools, I think, will be ubiquitous. It's going to take a little while to get going, though. Things like on the image front, I think images are way behind. Copy is not really ready for prime time. Things like, removing objects, maybe tweaking backgrounds, upscaling images, that's good, but not a lot of opportunity to like just spin up, creative from nothing. Not currently. Copy, even that's better, but like a well-trained, copywriter is still going to produce better copy than these things. It's really kind of like a junior assistant kind of level, can help you with tone, do some editing and things like that, give you some ideas, ideation, but you're not going to be wanting to like hand over control of that. And that's where I'm kind of skeptical. The industry seems very obsessed with this idea that we could just hand everything over to Gen AI models and they're going to create bespoke one-to-one emails, and that's going to be better. And I'm just intensely skeptical of that idea. It is not ready to do that. And certainly, again, enterprises are not ready to give over that level of control. And I know we're going to talk more about personalization later, so I think maybe I'll cut it there.
Lauren, how about you?
Okay, so yeah, I think my biggest concern with the use of AI is how people are using the data in that. To Chad's point, we've got all these founders, just all these kind of experts in data who are like, oh yes, I'll put something together. This is pretty easy. I'll just make it work. But they kind of they don't know how to look at data through a marketing lens, or more specifically as somebody who understands email, how email works, how complex email is. There's like a different filter on the lens that way, I think. And I've seen some of those implementations go really poorly before. Like somebody had an algorithm where they were trying to optimize for opens, right? So the mail started going to the spam folder. The machine solution for that was to just send more email, right? Just send one more email and then you're going to get more opens. That's going to be great, right? But I think everybody in this virtual room knows that that's not really what you're actually trying to do in real life. So it's super important to be clear on what AI can and should be doing and what we need to be doing with like our strategic human brains. We need to be the ones who are directing AI rather than simply kind of just relying on it to decide the who, the when, the how. We've got something at SocketLabs, and like we've been training those models for years, and there's lots of careful guidance, and we have people that are kind of looking for the edge cases, and we're trying to make it highly accurate and actionable, and we feel pretty good about it. But there has to be like a lot of responsibility, a lot of oversight that goes into planning those models out and figuring out what's going to happen. What do we want the AI to do when something pops up, right? We're not just interested in putting the work in there. We need people to really understand how that works, right? Like, I think that's everybody's kind of just going into autopilot mode and they're like, woohoo, cool. AI is smart. This is awesome. But pop in an outline, try to pop something out, and it's pretty terrible. So I think we need to be the ones to translate that information. And really in the short term, when we're all just kind of still feeling around in the dark and trying to figure this out, AI will not replace human oversight. We need to be the ones in control of that.
I just wanted to emphasize Lauren's point about domain expertise. It's just so critical. You know, the folks, the data scientists who are making some of these models, they don't have that. And you can make models that accomplish the goal very poorly. You know, so like we recently learned of a company that was using, it created an ML model for mitigating email churn. And the model very quickly figured out that the folks most likely to churn were new subscribers. And so it drastically cut the volume to new subscribers. It didn't understand that new subscribers and established subscribers behave very differently. And so again, that domain expertise is just so critical.
Yeah, it's almost like that concept of building trust. AI can't measure or monitor where trust is on the sort of spectrum of somebody's life cycle. All right. Next topic is workflows and design trends. How, you know, if any of you who caught Chad's session this morning on the past 20 years of designs, we got a nice little overview. How do you all think that if we were to do that same session 5-10 years from now, what will designs, how are you all expecting designs to change in the coming years, both in how they show up in our inboxes and how marketers are creating them? Chad, why don't you start, since you had the session this morning?
Sure. I mean, design definitely has changed a ton over the years. Yeah, I don't know that the look and feel of emails are going to change radically. I mean, I think, you know, I think there's always a tendency to get shorter. I think that trend line is probably going to continue. But I think the bigger changes are more on how we create emails and the fact that we're actually going to be creating emails a lot less. They'll be creating email content a lot more. And so like that's one of the things that AI is doing, is it's turning us, you know, from, you know, making emails to making email content blocks, and that those content blocks get served up by AI and machine learning algorithms to the right folks. I mean, already today, there's tons of brands, especially retail brands, media brands that, you know, have an email that goes out that has 100,000 versions. And that's a new kind of challenge. That's impossible to QA to state the obvious, but also it's like it's very hard to like stay on top of that. We've seen like PR incidences where people use like sort of insensitive language, but it's only insensitive because of things that just happened. There's no way to manage a content library for that kind of those sensitivity issues. Like there's no way to like, I'm watching the news, something happened. Do we have anything that's related to that, you know, in our upcoming newsletter? Who knows? Because you're pulling from this massive library of stuff. So that's going to be a challenge. So I see that's like sort of the biggest way that things are going to change, is that we're going less from creating emails to creating email content that AI tools are going to like largely assemble.
Drew, how about from your point of view?
Yeah, so I think this is in alignment with Chad's earlier session, but from a principled standpoint, challenging conventions and yes, shorter, crisper, above the fold, all those optimizations at a macro level, that makes sense. But I'd also say at a principled level, start to think of the email channel as product rather than marketing or as a gateway. So this is something that I write a lot of content about. Email can serve as a product feature. It can serve as a core extension of the product experience. Context, we have an obligation to provide context to our users about paywall, about other aspects of our product and service. So I've always found it kind of funny to optimize for a click-through rate when because it's measurable, it can be a bit of a vanity metric, versus optimizing for context and sentiment and longitudinal influence of what we're doing. So I think part of this bubbles up, and all these topics kind of bubble up to how do we measure success? And I think we've been too addicted to measuring success based on short-term direct results. And if we start to look more longitudinally and downstream and influence rather than just like a 5-day window of impact, last touch attribution, those types of things. Regardless of your attribution model, looking longitudinally, I think, is where a lot of the gold that we might be missing right now in these, quote unquote, best practices really lies. So I think context, optimizing for the moment at hand, optimizing for the goal of what you're trying to provide value for that user in that moment of time in the life cycle, that to me, 9 times out of 10 will ultimately get the better holistic result, but you got to figure out how to measure it.
Mm-hmm. Lauren, anything on that front from your end?
Yeah, I mean, I just, so much has been changing in the last couple of years, right? We don't need to really go through the list, but tracking is harder. We've got the new provider requirements. We've got, tabbed experiences, more of those than ever. Mailbox providers are continuing to focus more and more on recipient behavior to kind of figure out, what deserves to reach the inbox. But like, if you think about all the changes that are happening, the central character in all of those is who? It's the email recipients, right? Everybody's trying to make them safer, happier, more productive within their inboxes. So I think marketers like us are all trying to do that. Receivers are trying to do that, and everybody in between. So I think we want them to not only be content with the mail that lands in their inbox, but we want recipients to be like jazzed about it, right? So I think today's subscribers really are expecting just like a much more seamless experience where the content just loads right away, and it includes like these engaging elements that feel dynamic and adaptive and really personalized, like they're kind of just for them. And I think it's inevitable that design is going to just continue to be more interactive, and it's truly going to be tried to tailor to reflect like that individual level preferences and context. But I think it's just, how do you do that, right? How do you get creative with the tools that are available today? If you don't have those tools, how can you just kind of dig into your email data to understand what your audience likes and what they don't like, and then really just get creative about how you can keep them coming back for more, right? More and more and more. And I think once you figure that out, that's the point when you can try to find ways to automate it. But the AI should really be supporting this approach instead of just kind of controlling it. So I think we just have to be careful with the way that we move forward.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's a perfect segue to our next question, which is about personalization specifically. Where do you all see the personalization trend going? Is it going to be a part of every send in the future? At some point, are we over personalizing or overworking ourselves and our systems to personalize where it isn't necessary? How do you all sort of think about that? Let's start, Chad, with you.
Yeah, so I mean, this may be a shocker, but we already see some brands that have realized that they've over personalized, that they've had email campaigns where all the content is personalized, and they realized that they were squeezing out brand messaging, that they were losing that common experience they were looking to create for their subscribers, and they actually dialed it back. So I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm really skeptical of this idea of having Gen AI write these like bespoke emails that so many companies seem to be very obsessed with. But I mean, Drew talked about analytics having better visibility, being less short-term, more long-term. I think there's going to be tons of changes on the analytics side of things. I mean, as Lauren alluded to, like our data is not always that great. Our analytics don't allow us to like see what's going on in our not great data. And then we're going to magically make the jump from this sort of messy data scenario at most companies to some like magical one-to-one bespoke emails. No, that's not how the story is going to go. And then even now, there's lots of caveats with personalization. People think it's magic, and it's not. It's a lot of careful consideration. So for instance, we put together a marketing checklist that included more than 170 attributes of that you could use for personalization and segmentation. Is every one of these attributes going to work for your company? No. Are the majority going to work for your company? No. There's only going to be probably a handful of them that would make sense for any given campaign you were doing. So the magic is all in figuring out, hey, what's the handful of things or less that we get personalized for this particular campaign that's really going to move the needle. It's not about like personalizing everything. It's not about maximal. It's about being selective and thoughtful and understanding your subscriber, understanding your message, and then personalizing those elements that make the most sense. So yeah, I think we've got a long way to go, but the trend line is super interesting. And again, I agree with Drew that we need to get much better with analytics, have much better sort of long-term goals, way too much short-termism. Right now we're so much optimizing for campaigns instead of subscriber experiences longitudinally. I don't think that's not how it's gonna be done in 5-10 years. There's gonna be a much bigger focus on relationships over time at the subscriber level, and a lot less focus on individual campaign performance.
Yeah. Drew, anything on that front? I know you have some opinions on the personalization side.
Sure. Yeah, no, that was all great. I agree with Chad. I'd say, again, for me, it's about zooming out to the program level and talking about use cases. So if you have an offers program, how can you do individual level pricing and optimize that way and call that personalization? If you have product announcements, which basically everybody does, where does it make sense to contextualize those based on certain behaviors versus do it at the macro sense? You can bake in the branding in all of these. You can have it modular in certain sections that are dynamic. I think we're already in this ballpark right now. And then, beyond that, honestly, I just think that in 5 years, the term personalization will be outdated. It will just be kind of default. And right now we all hijack it for different things. Like it depends on the context, but hopefully things like frequency, what to recommend, recommender programs, these types of things. I do think that we will see more algorithmic in nature, but I am not, I promise I'm not pushing an agenda of we don't need to be involved. It just needs to be an augmentation for a lot of people don't have the resources or the level of interest internally to build out a recommender series, for instance. I do think we have a lot of that at our disposal now. And they're going to get cheaper and cheaper. So for people having these build or buy discussions, I think you have a different marketplace starting to take shape. But yeah, you don't just do personalization for the sake of personalization. It needs to be a high leverage, big swing decision and go from there.
Lauren, I'll give you the last word on this one.
Nice. Yeah. I think I love what the gentlemen have said. I think it's really it's not realistic for a lot of brands to kind of get to that hyper personalized state. Like the juice is simply just kind of like not worth the squeeze. Even if we had the resources to do it, it just doesn't make sense. So, at the same time, I think there are a lot of creative ways that we can kind of fake something that's close to that level of personalization by just analyzing the data, understanding the program, as Drew said, kind of stepping back and kind of considering the use cases and how you can personalize the journey for those people. I think that's something that you should do both within the email channel specifically, but then across all of your marketing channels, do that customer research, really understand the flow that you're trying to create, the whole kind of vibe, if you will. Keep testing from there, follow your data, but I think you can get very creative and come up with ways to really improve that brand experience.
Yeah. If you can believe it, we are already a couple minutes over, and there was so much more I wanted to ask you all, but thank you each for your participation today. And all of these guys have their own individual sessions. Chad was today, and it was phenomenal. You can catch it on demand if you didn't catch it. Lauren and Drew, I think, are both on Wednesday. Did we determine that? Yep. So look out for those. Thank you all for your participation. After this, there is an insight session from Constant Contact that you can access via the attendee hub. And thank you so much for joining. We will see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.